I remember the first time I tried to learn English. I couldn't understand the grammar, and the vocabulary seemed endless. Every time I tried to speak, I felt embarrassed because I couldn't find the right words. My frustration grew, and I almost gave up. But then I realized I needed a better approach, a method that would make learning more enjoyable and effective. That's when I decided to create my own study routine. One of my biggest problems was consistency. I would study one day and then skip the next 3. To fix this, I started setting small daily goals. My first goal was to learn 5 new words each day. I wrote these words on flashcards and carried them everywhere. I practiced them during lunch breaks, while waiting in line, or even before going to bed. This small habit became the foundation of my learning journey. Listening was another challenge for me. When native speakers talked, it sounded like one long, endless word. To improve, I began listening to podcasts and watching TV shows with subtitles. At first, I didn't understand much, but I forced myself to listen every day. Over time, I started catching individual words and phrases. Listening helped me understand how words connect in real conversations. Speaking was the skill I avoided the most. I was scared of making mistakes and being judged. But then I found a solution, talking to myself. Every morning, I would describe my plans for the day in English. At night, I'd reflect on what happened, also in English. It felt awkward at first, but it gave me confidence to speak without fear of judgment. Gradually, I became more comfortable using English. Finally, I realized the importance of writing. To improve this skill, I started keeping a journal. Each day, I wrote about my thoughts, feelings, and experiences in English. Writing not only helped me practice grammar, but also gave me a safe space to express myself. This combination of reading, listening, speaking, and writing became the foundation of my study method. Chapter 2: The Power of Immersion. One day, I read an article about immersion, and it completely changed my perspective. The idea was simple: surround yourself with English as much as possible. I started by changing the language on my phone, computer, and even my social media accounts to English. It felt strange at first, but I quickly adapted. Every notification, message, or app became a mini English lesson. I was learning without even realizing it. Music also became a big part of my immersion journey. I created playlists with my favorite English songs and sang along to them. At first, I mispronounced many words, but I didn't let that stop me. Singing improved my pronunciation and rhythm, and it was fun. Over time, I noticed I could understand the lyrics without looking them up. Music helped me connect with the language on a deeper level. Another key to immersion was reading. I started with children's books because they used simple vocabulary and short sentences. As my confidence grew, I moved on to novels and articles online. Reading exposed me to new words and phrases in context, which made them easier to remember. It also improved my grammar naturally, without boring exercises. I also decided to join online communities where people spoke English. Forums, social media groups, and language exchange apps became my new classrooms. I asked questions, share my opinions, and learn from native speakers and other learners. These interactions were not only educational, but also inspiring. They showed me that making mistakes is part of the process. Finally, I created an English-only zone in my home. For 1 hour each day, I banned my native language. During that time, I watched videos, wrote notes, or even thought in English. It was challenging, but it forced me to rely on the language I was learning. This daily practice boosted my confidence and reinforced my progress. Chapter 3: The Secret of Spaced Repetition. As I continued learning, I realized that forgetting was my biggest enemy. I would learn a new word one day and forget it the next. That's when I discovered spaced repetition, a technique that changed everything. It's a system where you review information at increasing intervals to help it stick in your memory. I downloaded an app specifically designed for spaced repetition. Every time I learn a new word, I added it to the app. The app reminded me to review the word at the perfect time, just before I was about to forget it. This method worked like magic. Words I used to forget were now permanently stored in my memory. To make it even more effective, I created sentences with each word. For example, if I learned the word challenge, I would write sentences like, "Learning English is a challenge, but I enjoy it." This helped me understand how to use the words in context, not just memorize their definitions. I also started reviewing grammar rules using the same technique. Instead of reading an entire grammar book, I focused on one rule at a time. I wrote examples, practiced them, and reviewed them using the app. This made grammar less intimidating and much more manageable. Another trick I used was recording myself. I would read the words and sentences aloud and listen to the recordings later. Hearing myself helped me notice mistakes I didn't catch while speaking. It also boosted my confidence because I could hear my progress over time. Spaced repetition taught me an important lesson. Consistency beats intensity. Studying a little bit every day was more effective than cramming for hours. This method became a core part of my routine, ensuring that every effort I made was not wasted. Chapter 4: Turning Mistakes into Lessons. At some point, I realized that my fear of mistakes was holding me back. I avoided speaking in public, even when I had the chance. But then, I read a quote that changed my mindset. Mistakes are proof that you're trying. From that moment, I decided to embrace my errors as opportunities to learn. I joined a local English conversation group to practice speaking. The first time I spoke, I made so many mistakes that I wanted to disappear. But instead of laughing at me, the group encouraged me. They corrected my errors kindly and praised my effort. This positive environment motivated me to keep trying. To track my progress, I started keeping a mistake journal. Every time I made an error, I wrote it down along with the correct version. For example, if I said, "He don't like apples," I would correct it to, "He doesn't like apples." Reviewing these notes helped me avoid repeating the same mistakes. Watching videos of native speakers was another way I learned from mistakes. I compared how they spoke to how I spoke and noted the differences. Sometimes I even mimic their accents and intonation. This not only improved my pronunciation, but also made me sound more natural. Over time, my fear of mistakes disappeared. I realized that every error brought me closer to fluency. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I felt proud of my efforts. Turning mistakes into lessons became one of the most valuable parts of my learning journey. Chapter 5: The Reward of Fluency. After months of hard work, I noticed a big change. One day, I had a conversation with a native speaker, and they didn't have to slow down or repeat themselves. I understood them, and they understood me. It was a moment of pure joy and pride. I realized that my method was working. To celebrate, I decided to test my skills further. I joined an online debate in English. It was challenging, but I was able to express my thoughts clearly and confidently. The feedback I received from other participants was overwhelmingly positive. This experience showed me how far I had come. I also started helping others who were learning English. I shared my method and tips with friends and online communities. Teaching others reinforced my own knowledge and gave me a sense of accomplishment. It felt amazing to inspire others and be part of their journey. Looking back, I realized that the key to my success was not just the method, but my determination. Learning English was not easy, but every small effort added up. From flashcards to conversations, every step brought me closer to fluency. Now, English is a part of my daily life. I read books, watch movies, and even dream in English sometimes. This journey taught me not only a new language, but also the value of perseverance. If I could do it, anyone can. All it takes is a method that works and the determination to follow through. Chapter 6: Building Confidence Through Practice. After gaining some fluency, I realized that confidence was the next big challenge. Even though I could communicate in English, I often hesitated. To overcome this, I set a goal to speak English daily, no matter how small the interaction. I started by ordering food in English at restaurants and asking simple questions to strangers. These small steps helped me build confidence gradually. I also started recording myself more often. I would choose a topic, set a timer for 2 minutes, and talk about it in English. Listening to the recordings allowed me to identify areas for improvement. Sometimes I noticed errors I hadn't caught while speaking. Over time, these recordings became a great way to track my progress and boost my confidence. Another strategy one used was shadowing. I listened to podcasts or videos and repeated everything the speaker said, trying to match their speed and intonation. It was challenging at first, but it improved my pronunciation and rhythm significantly. Shadowing also helped me get used to speaking English without overthinking. Participating in language exchange meetups was another confidence booster. These meetups paired me with native speakers who wanted to learn my language. We would spend half the time speaking in English and the other half in my native language. It was a win-win situation where both of us learned and encouraged each other. Lastly, I gave myself permission to make mistakes. I reminded myself that every fluent speaker was once a beginner. This mindset shift was crucial in helping me overcome the fear of speaking. Confidence didn't come overnight, but with consistent practice and a positive attitude, I became more comfortable using English in any situation. Chapter 7: Mastering Pronunciation. Pronunciation was one of the hardest parts of learning English. Some sounds didn't exist in my native language, and I often struggled to say them correctly. To tackle this, I focused on one sound at a time. For example, the TH sound was particularly difficult for me. I practiced it daily by repeating words like think and though until it felt natural. YouTube became my pronunciation coach. I watched countless videos of native speakers explaining how to form different sounds. They broke down the movements of the tongue and lips, which made a huge difference. I would pause the videos and mimic the speakers until I could pronounce the words correctly. I also used tongue twisters as a fun way to practice. Phrases like, "she sells seashells by the seashore," helped me work on tricky sounds. I repeated them slowly at first, then gradually increased my speed. It was challenging, but it improved my clarity and control over my pronunciation. Another useful tool was voice recognition apps. These apps allowed me to say a word or phrase and check if I pronounced it correctly. If the app misunderstood me, I knew I needed more practice. This instant feedback was invaluable for refining my skills. Over time, my pronunciation improved significantly. It wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough for people to understand me. This progress boosted my confidence and made conversation smoother. Mastering pronunciation taught me the importance of patience and persistence in learning a language. Chapter 8: Expanding Vocabulary with Context. Building a strong vocabulary was crucial to my success. At first, I focused on memorizing lists of words, but they didn't stick. Then, I discovered the power of learning vocabulary in context. Instead of isolated words, I started focusing on phrases and sentences. For example, instead of just learning the word run, I learned phrases like run out of time or run into someone. Reading became my favorite way to expand my vocabulary. I chose topics that interested me, like technology or travel, and read articles or blogs about them. Whenever I encountered a new word, I wrote it down along with the sentence it appeared in. This helped me understand how the word was used in real situations. I also played vocabulary games to make learning fun. Apps like word puzzles or flashcard games kept me engaged while practicing. These games introduced me to new words and reinforced the ones I already knew. Learning through play made the process enjoyable and less stressful. Speaking with native speakers was another great way to learn new words. During conversations, I often heard expressions or slang I hadn't encountered before. I would ask for explanations or look them up later. These interactions enriched my vocabulary with natural and everyday language. By focusing on context, I not only learned more words, but also remembered them better. This approach transformed vocabulary building from a chore into an exciting part of my daily routine. Chapter 9: Setting Realistic Goals. One mistake I made early on was setting unrealistic goals. I wanted to become fluent in a month, which led to frustration and burnout. Eventually, I realized that progress takes time, and setting smaller, achievable goals was more effective. For example, instead of aiming to master English, I set goals like learning 10 new words a week or having a 5-minute conversation. I also started tracking my progress. I used a notebook to write down what I learned each day. This simple habit helped me see how far I'd come. Whenever I felt discouraged, I looked back at my notes and felt motivated to keep going. Progress might be slow, but it was steady. Another important lesson was learning to celebrate small victories. Whether it was understanding a movie without subtitles or successfully ordering coffee in English, I acknowledged and rewarded my achievements. These moments reminded me that every step forward was a step closer to fluency. I also created a study schedule that fit my lifestyle. Instead of cramming for hours, I dedicated 30 minutes to English every day. Consistency mattered more than the amount of time I spent. This approach kept me from feeling overwhelmed and made learning a natural part of my routine. Realistic goals and consistent effort became the foundation of my success. They taught me that learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. With patience and determination, I knew I could reach my ultimate goal. Chapter 10: My Life in English. Today, English is no longer just a subject I study. It's a part of my life. I wake up and read the news in English, write my to-do list in English, and end my day watching a show in English. This immersion has transformed not only my skills but also my confidence. One of the best parts of learning English is the doors it has opened for me. I've made friends from around the world, explored new career opportunities, and even traveled to English-speaking countries. These experiences have enriched my life in ways I never imagined. Looking back, I'm proud of how far I've come. From struggling to say basic phrases to holding deep conversations, my journey has been full of challenges and rewards. Every mistake, every effort, and every success has shaped the learner I am today. Now, I find joy in helping others who are starting their English journey. I share my story, tips, and methods to inspire them. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that anyone can learn English with the right mindset and strategies. English has become more than a language for me. It's a bridge to new opportunities and connections. My journey isn't over, but I'm excited to keep learning and growing. If I could do it, so can anyone else? All it takes is determination, patience, and a method that works. Chapter 11: Embracing Mistakes as Part of Learning. One of the most important lessons I learned was the value of making mistakes. At first, I was terrified of saying the wrong thing or mispronouncing a word. But as I practiced, I realized that mistakes were an essential part of learning. Each error was an opportunity to grow and improve my skills. I remember a specific moment during a conversation with a native speaker. I accidentally mixed up kitchen and chicken, which made both of us laugh. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I used the moment to ask for clarification and practice the correct pronunciation. That interaction stuck with me and helped me remember the words better. Another breakthrough came when I started writing short stories in English. I often made grammatical errors, but instead of being discouraged, I sought feedback. Teachers and friends corrected my mistakes, and I learned from each revision. Over time, my writing became more polished, and I gained confidence in expressing myself. Mistakes also taught me patience. Learning a language is a process, and expecting perfection only leads to frustration. By embracing my imperfections, I became more open to trying new things like speaking in public or joining English discussion groups. These experiences helped me grow faster than I ever expected. Now, I see mistakes as stepping stones. They remind me that progress isn't about avoiding errors, but about learning from them. This mindset has made my language learning journey much more enjoyable and rewarding. Chapter 12: The Power of Storytelling. Storytelling became a powerful tool in my English studies. I discovered that sharing personal experiences or imagining fictional scenarios helped me practice speaking and writing naturally. Instead of focusing solely on grammar, I concentrated on conveying meaning, which improved my fluency over time. I started by narrating my daily activities. Each evening, I wrote a short paragraph about my day in English. At first, it was challenging, but with practice, I noticed my sentences becoming more fluid and descriptive. This habit also helped me identify gaps in my vocabulary and grammar. Group storytelling activities were another great exercise. I joined a language club where participants built stories together. One person would start a story, and others would add to it, sentence by sentence. This collaborative approach was not only fun, but also encouraged me to think quickly and creatively in English. Listening to stories also played a significant role. Audiobooks and podcasts introduced me to new expressions and improved my comprehension. Hearing how words were used in context helped me understand nuances and cultural references, making my speech more natural. Through storytelling, I connected with others and deepened my understanding of the language. It showed me that learning English isn't just about rules and vocabulary. It's about communication and creativity. Chapter 13: Surrounding Myself with English. Immersion was a game changer for my English learning. I made a conscious effort to surround myself with the language as much as possible. This meant integrating English into my daily life in ways that felt natural and enjoyable. I changed the settings on my phone and computer to English. At first, it was confusing, but it forced me to learn new terms quickly. Tasks like sending emails or using apps became mini language lessons. This constant exposure helped reinforce my vocabulary and made English feel like a normal part of my routine. Watching movies and TV shows in English became another favorite activity. I started with subtitles in my native language, then gradually switched to English subtitles. Eventually, I watched without subtitles, focusing on understanding the dialogue through context. This practice improved both my listening skills and comprehension. Joining online communities where English was the primary language also helped. Whether it was forums, social media groups, or gaming platforms, these interactions provided real-life practice. I made friends from different countries, which motivated me to communicate clearly and effectively. Even during quiet moments, I try to think in English. For example, while walking, I describe my surroundings in English in my mind. This habit helped me transition from translating thoughts to thinking directly in the language. Immersion turned learning into a lifestyle rather than a task. Chapter 14, Developing Listening Skills. Listening was one of the hardest skills for me to master, but it was also one of the most rewarding. To improve, I dedicated time every day to active listening exercises, focusing on understanding different accents and speeds of speech. Podcasts became my go-to resource. I chose topics I enjoyed like travel or self-improvement and listened to episodes repeatedly. At first, I understood only fragments, but with patience and repetition, I began to grasp entire sentences. I also wrote down phrases I heard and practiced using them in my own conversations. Another method I used was dictation. I played short audio clips and tried to write down exactly what I heard. This exercise sharpened my focus and helped me catch details I often missed. Comparing my notes with the original audio highlighted areas for improvement. Songs were another fun way to practice listening. I picked English songs, printed the lyrics, and sang along. This activity improved my pronunciation, rhythm, and ability to catch words in fast-paced speech. It also introduced me to idiomatic expressions and cultural references. Most importantly, I learned to be patient with myself. Understanding spoken English takes time, especially with different accents and slang. By consistently practicing and exposing myself to various sources, I turned listening from a challenge into one of my strengths. Chapter 15, Reflecting on My Journey. As I look back on my journey, I realize how much I've grown. Learning English wasn't just about acquiring a new skill. It was about transforming my mindset, building confidence, and embracing challenges. Each step, from memorizing vocabulary to mastering pronunciation, taught me valuable lessons. I'm grateful for the methods and strategies that worked for me, but I also understand that everyone's journey is unique. What matters most is finding what motivates you and sticking with it. For me, combining consistency with creativity made all the difference. Sharing my story with others has become a passion. I want to inspire fellow learners to believe in themselves and their ability to succeed. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint, but every small effort brings you closer to fluency. Looking ahead, I know my English journey isn't over. There's always more to learn, more experiences to have, and more people to connect with. But I'm excited for the future because I now have the tools and confidence to continue growing. To anyone starting their English journey, my advice is simple: enjoy the process. Celebrate your progress. Learn from your mistakes and never give up. With determination and the right methods, you can achieve anything you set your mind to. Chapter 16: Building Confidence Through Practice. Confidence in speaking English didn't come overnight. It was the result of persistent practice. I started small, speaking to myself in front of a mirror. At first it felt strange, but it gave me a chance to focus on my pronunciation and expressions without pressure. This simple exercise helped me feel more comfortable using the language. Next, I practiced with language partners. I found people online who were also learning English or native speakers willing to help. These conversations weren't perfect, but they taught me to think on my feet and adapt to different situations. Each interaction boosted my self-assurance. Public speaking exercises were another key step. I joined a local English club where members took turns presenting on different topics. Preparing and delivering speeches was nerve-wracking at first, but it pushed me out of my comfort zone. Over time, I became more confident speaking in front of others. Recording myself was a game changer. I would read aloud or share my thoughts while recording, then listen back to identify areas for improvement. Hearing my own voice helped me notice pronunciation issues and refine my intonation. This practice also made me less self-conscious about how I sounded. Finally, I reminded myself to celebrate small victories. Each successful conversation, correct sentence, or improved pronunciation was a step forward. Confidence grew not from perfection, but from recognizing and embracing progress. Chapter 17: Using English in Real-Life Scenarios. Integrating English into my daily life made a huge difference. I began by using English during routine activities, like shopping or ordering food at restaurants. These interactions were short but practical, giving me real-world experience with the language. Traveling was another excellent opportunity to practice. During trips to English-speaking countries, I immersed myself in the language. Asking for directions, checking into hotels, or even chatting with locals challenged me to apply what I had learned. Each encounter reinforced my skills and boosted my confidence. Role-playing became a fun way to prepare for real-life situations. I acted out scenarios like job interviews or casual conversations with friends. This practice helped me anticipate common phrases and questions, making actual interactions feel less intimidating. Using English at work was also beneficial. I volunteered to handle tasks that involved English, such as writing emails or giving presentations. Though challenging at first, these responsibilities push me to expand my vocabulary and refine my communication skills. Real-life scenarios taught me that communication is about more than just words. Gestures, facial expressions, and tone play a significant role. Understanding this made me a more effective and confident speaker, even when my grammar wasn't perfect. Chapter 18: Setting Long-Term Goals. Having clear goals kept me motivated throughout my English learning journey. Instead of focusing on vague objectives like speak fluently, I set specific, measurable targets. For example, I aim to read one English book every month or hold a 10-minute conversation with a native speaker. Writing down my goals made them feel more tangible. I kept a journal where I tracked my progress and reflected on my challenges. This habit helped me stay focused and celebrate milestones, no matter how small they seemed. Breaking goals into smaller steps made them less overwhelming. If my goal was to improve vocabulary, I focused on learning 5 new words a day. Over weeks and months, these small efforts added up to significant progress. Long-term goals also required adaptability. Sometimes life got busy and I couldn't dedicate as much time to learning. Instead of giving up, I adjusted my goals to fit my schedule. This flexibility allowed me to maintain momentum even during busy periods. Having a vision for the future motivated me to keep going. Whether it was traveling abroad, advancing my career, or connecting with new people, my goals reminded me why I started learning English in the first place. Chapter 19: Overcoming Plateaus. Plateaus were a natural part of my journey, but they were also frustrating. At times, it felt like I wasn't improving, no matter how much effort I put in. To overcome these periods, I had to change my approach and find new ways to challenge myself. One strategy was diversifying my study materials. Instead of sticking to textbooks, I explored podcasts, novels, and online courses. This variety kept learning fresh and exposed me to different aspects of the language. It also helped me identify areas where I could improve. Joining advanced conversation groups pushed me out of my comfort zone. Speaking with people who were more fluent than me forced me to think quickly and expand my vocabulary. Though intimidating, these interactions helped me break through plateaus and grow. Setting new challenges was another effective method. For example, I decided to watch a movie without subtitles or write a story entirely in English. These tasks were tough, but they provided a sense of accomplishment and showed me how much I had learned. Finally, I reminded myself to stay patient. Progress isn't always linear, and plateaus don't mean failure. By staying persistent and trying new strategies, I eventually broke through and reached the next level of fluency. Chapter 20: Passing on What I've Learned. Teaching others became the ultimate test of my English skills. I started helping friends and family members who were also learning the language. Explaining concepts and answering questions reinforced my knowledge and highlighted areas where I could improve. I volunteered as a tutor at a local language center, working with beginners. Seeing their struggles reminded me of my own journey, and it felt rewarding to help them overcome challenges. Teaching required me to simplify complex ideas, which deepened my understanding of the language. Creating content online was another way to share my knowledge. I started a blog where I wrote about my experiences and offered tips for other learners. Writing in English not only improved my skills, but also connected me with a global community of language enthusiasts. Sharing my journey also inspired others to start their own. I received messages from people who felt encouraged by my story, which motivated me to keep learning and improving. It showed me that language learning isn't just about personal growth. It's about building connections and supporting others. Reflecting on how far I've come, I feel grateful for the challenges and successes that shaped my journey. Teaching others has been a fulfilling way to give back and ensure that the lessons I've learned continue to make an impact.